Good morning. The poem for today is A Prayer for My Daughter by William Butler Yeats. W.P. Yeats, as he is more properly known as. William Butler Yeats was born on June 13, 1865. He died on January 28, 1939. He is widely considered as one of the greatest poets of the English language. He received the prestigious Nobel Prize for Literature in 1923. His work was greatly influenced by the heritage and politics of Ireland. And he is known for many of his poems in several phases that he wrote. The setting for A Prayer for My Daughter is that it is a reflection of the poet's love for his daughter. It is about the surviving of the turmoil of the contemporary world where passions have been separated from reason. The setting of the poem is unspecified, though the speaker of the poet himself is talking to his daughter. The tone is gloomy, precarious, and frightening as well as didactic. You have this, it's a pretty dramatic setting. There is storm outside, and the poet is with his daughter, safely cradled and quite safe and secure in his hands from the storm that is recurring outside. And there's a lot of inner turmoil also, which we will see as we go through the poem. Here's a brief summary. I put it in points. It has 10 stanzas. In the first stanza, you have the image of a newborn baby sleeping in a cradle. In the second stanza, you have Yeats's worries about the future, which are explained in detail. In the third stanza, he prays for his daughter to be gifted with beauty. But what kind of beauty? You'll read that. In the fourth stanza, Yeats substantiates his views on how excessive beauty has been the cause of destruction many a times. In the fifth stanza, he wants his daughter to be compassionate. In the next stanza, there are more hopes and expectations for his daughter. Then there is self-containment, talk about self-containment in woman in the seventh stanza. In the eighth stanza, he wants his daughter to shun passion and wild, violent feelings. In the ninth, he explains the impact of hatred and benefits of conquering hatred. In the 10th stanza, there is a final wish. Every father wants his daughter to be married happily, but here he wishes her to be married and rooted in spiritual values. I now take up each stanza for explanation. Once more the storm is howling, and half hid under this cradle hood and cover lid my child sleeps on. There's no obstacle but Gregory's wood and one bare hill, whereby the haystack and roof-levelling wind bred on the Atlantic can be stayed. And for an hour I have walked and prayed because of the great gloom that is in my mind. You see, the very first stanza sets the tone and mood of the poem. Last line says there is great gloom in his mind. He says there's a storm howling outside, but his child is sleeping in the cradle, in the covered cradle, and there are no barriers, there are no obstacles, but there's the Gregory's wood. Lady Gregory was known to be Yeats's patron. So he mentions that place, and there's one bare hill, and there's the haystack, there's the roof leveling wind. That is, the child is sleeping cozily in his company, safe and secure from the outside world. And for an hour I walked and prayed. This is how he begins his poem. Because there's the storm outside, because he is himself very disturbed, he continues his prayer. There's no mention of his wife or the child's mother throughout the poem. It shows the father's concern for his newborn daughter. I have walked and prayed for this young child an hour, and heard the sea wind scream upon the tower, and under the arches of the bridge, and scream in the elms above the flooded stream, imagining in excited reverie that the future years had come, dancing to the frenzied drum out of the murderous innocence of the sea. See, Yeats was known most for his symbolism. Each line of a poem might contain a strong symbol. He says that he has walked and prayed for the young child for over an hour. He can hear the sea wind scream upon the tower and under the arches of the bridge, and screams in the elm trees above the flooded stream. Imagining in excited reverie, as he looks back, he imagines what the future years holds for him and the child. That the future years had come dancing to a frenzied drum out of the murderous innocence of the sea. He imagines how the future years will come. It seems that the future years will come dancing to a frenzied drum. You have the sharp beating of the drum, which corresponds with the howling storm, and it comes out of the murderous innocence of the sea. You see the term murderous innocence, paradox. The sea can be innocent, sea can symbolize life, beauty, magnanimity, but it is murderous at the same time. So, future years have been imagined as coming with a dance beating to the drum and coming out of the sea. In the third stanza, he starts talking about what he wants for his child, what he imagines for his child. May she be granted beauty, and yet not beauty to make a stranger's eye distraught, or hers before a looking glass, for such being made beautiful overmuch, consider beauty a sufficient end. Lose natural kindness, and maybe the heart revealing intimacy that chooses right and never find a friend. Yeats's own experiences also come to the fore to some extent in this poem. He wrote most of his poems in the between 18 to 28, which were very perturbed times. And he had a very close friend, Maud Gonne. We don't hear comment upon the relationship which he might have had, but then because of the disillusionment he had to have with this friend, the mention comes on and off. He prays that his daughter be granted beauty, but not that much beauty to make the stranger's eye distraught. Not that much beauty as would attract strangers of all kinds, or hers before the looking glass, or she might be distracted before the glass. She might be telling herself that she's beautiful than anybody else, so she can have anything from anyone because of her beauty, because of the excess beauty. He wishes that his daughter has beauty, but not that much as would distract others' attentions. For such, being made beautiful overmuch, consider beauty a sufficient end. If a woman has too much beauty, what will happen? She'll start considering her beauty as an end in itself. And Yeats does not want this to happen to his child. Lose natural kindness and maybe the heart revealing intimacy that chooses right and never find a friend. Because too much beauty can make the woman think that beauty is in itself is a sufficient end. She might lose natural kindness and she might lose the right kind of intimacy, that is, choose the right person as a friend. She might not be able to, and she might go on to make foolish decisions, as would be exemplified in the next stanza. Helen, being chosen, found life flat and dull, and later had much trouble from a fool, while that great queen that rose out of spray, being fatherless, could have her way, yet chose a bandy-legged smith for man. It's certain that fine women eat a crazy salad with their meat, whereby the horn of plenty is undone. You see, Yeats now uses pretty strong words. He says, he gives the example of Helen, Helen of Troy. You see, it's often said that Helen of Troy is the face that launched 1,000 ships. So Helen, being chosen, found life flat and dull and later had much trouble from a fool. Well, Helen could have had a decent life. She was blessed with beauty, but she chose a fool and got into trouble. And hers was a phase that launched 1,000 ships. That is, she became the cause of an epic war. While that great queen that rose out of spray, being fatherless, could have her way, yet chose a bandy-legged smith for man. The second reference here is to Venus, or Aphrodite as she is called in Greek and Roman. She is supposed to have rose out of spray. She has out of spray is out of the ocean. You see, spray, uh, the foams coming out of the ocean. So that rose out of spray. So Venus or Aphrodite, being fatherless, could have had her way, could have chosen somebody right. Yet she chose the bandy-legged smith for a man. She is supposed to have chosen uh, Hephaestus or Vulcan, as he is known as, who was a good for nothing. So she made the wrong decision. It's certain that fine women eat a crazy salad with their meat, whereby the horn of plenty is undone. Then he makes a very casual comment. He says that fine women, at the background, he has Modgon in his mind. That fine women eat a crazy salad, something, maybe they eat something crazy, which is why they lose the right opportunity that they get in life. Whereby the horn of plenty is taken from the Bible. So, horn of plenty means the prosperity, the happiness, the good that can happen is all lost. He then starts talking about other qualities which his daughter should have. In courtesy, I'd have her chiefly learned. Hearts are not had as gift, but hearts are earned by those that are not entirely beautiful, yet many that have played the fool for beauty's very self has charm made wise, and many a poor man that has roved, loved, and thought himself beloved, from a glad kindness cannot take his eyes. So he says, she should be more courteous than she is beautiful. If she has courtesy, then she will learn that hearts are not had as gifts. That is, only beauty cannot win hearts, but they are earned by those that are not entirely beautiful. Somebody with a good heart, somebody with good qualities, particularly with the quality of courtesy, will be more pleasing, will earn more appreciation than just someone who is only beautiful. Yet many that have played the fool for beauty's very self has charm made wise, and many a poor man that has roved, loved, and thought himself beloved from a glad kindness cannot take his eyes. Beauty is perishable. Beauty can attract somebody, but that is momentary, that is ephemeral, that won't last forever. But kindness, one cannot take off his eyes out of the innate goodness that a woman has. May she become a flourishing hidden tree, that all her thoughts may like the linnet be, and have no business but dispensing round their magnanimities of sound, nor but in merriment begin a chase, nor but in merriment a quarrel. Or, oh, may she live like some green laurel, rooted in one dear perpetual place. See, he now wishes that his daughter should become a flourishing hidden tree, should be a hidden tree, hidden from the world, but always on the prosperous side, always flourishing. And her thoughts should be like the linnet, like a free bird. She should have no business, but she should be dispensing round their magnanimities of sound. See, the linnet cries, and the cry is dispersed everywhere and can be heard everywhere. Nor but in merriment make a chase. What merrily make a chase, nor but in merriment a quarrel. She should not do the wrong. She should always be in for sprightly. She should be sprightly like the linnet and be rooted like a hidden tree. She may be like a green laurel. She should be like a green laurel, always green and flourishing, rooted in one dear perpetual place. She should be rooted in one dear perpetual place means she should be stable. She should be stable inwardly, outwardly, in character, in values. That is what the poet wants for his child. My mind, because the minds that I have loved, the sort of beauty that I have approved, I prosper but little, has dried up of late, yet knows that to be choked with hate may well be of all evil chances chief. If there is no hatred in a mind, assault and battery of the wind can never tear the linnet from the leaf. See, the linnet symbol of the last stanza is repeated in this stanza again. He says, my mind, because the minds that I have loved, the sort of beauty that I have approved, I prosper but little. It has all dried up of late. He used his mind. Uh, the linnet is more natural, but he used his mind. He loved beauty. He also loved that sort of beauty and approved that sort of beauty, but which did not prosper, which dried up, yet knows that to be choked with hate may well be of all evil chances chief. If there is, he calls for abandoning hatred, even if whatever has happened to him he says that one should not be choked in hate, which means he wishes his daughter to be naturally loving. She should not let hate come anywhere close to her, because hatred of all kind is against progress. It brings about regression. It brings in evil. May well be of all evil chances chief. He says hatred is one of the biggest evils. It has been said of the seven sins also. If there is no hatred in a mind, assault and battery of the wind can never tear the linnet from the leaf. If there is no hatred in the mind, however rude people around you are, they won't matter, because success is imminent for the person who does not nurture hatred. It can never, if one has no hatred, one is like the linnet who will not be disturbed from the leaf on which it sits. He carries on this symbol of hatred in the next stanza. He says, an intellectual hatred is worst, so let her think opinions are accursed. Have I not seen the loveliest woman born out of the mouth of plenty's horn? Because of her opinionated mind, barter that horn, and every good by quiet natures understood for an old bellows full of angry wind. He says hatred is worse, but intellectual hatred is worst. Intellectual hatred which makes you opinionated. This should happen. This is happening. You have something, a feeling of hatred for someone, a feeling for hatred for some movement, a feeling of hatred uh, for a cause, and two strong feelings for something, for someone, for a cause. So he says, for a woman, intellectual hatred is worst, and if she nurtures intellectual hatred, then her opinions will become accursed. He then gives the example of himself and Modgon, where he says, have I not seen the loveliest woman born out of the mouth of plenty's horn? Because of her opinionated mind, barter that horn and every good by quiet natures understood for an old bellows full of angry wind. So this loveliest woman refers to Modgon, who fell for what Yeats believed a fool. McBride, his name was John McBride. She turned down Yeats's offer, and why? Because she was too opinionated. See, in the movements, the second coming, there are poems like that where Yeats himself was also strongly opinionated. He has expressed his anguish, he has expressed his desire. Ireland has always been struggling for its independence from Britain, from England, and there are many poems written where which describe the revolution in detail. So here the reference to Modgon is very apt. He says that because of her strong opinions, because of her political opinions, what did she do? She bartered, she gave away that horn of plenty. Horn of plenty again becomes the recurring symbol as was described in one of the early stanzas. Because of her opinionated mind, she bartered that horn and every good by quiet natures understood. Every good that good natures can understand for stormy bellows, for the storms, for the angry wind. That is, she took the wrong decisions. Considering that all hatred driven hence, the soul recovers radical innocence and learns at last that it is self delighting, self appeasing, self affrighting, and that its own sweet will is heaven's will. She can, though every face would scowl, and every windy quarter howl, or every bellows burst, be happy still. In this stanza, he makes a wish that once all hatred is driven, the soul of the daughter will so considering all hatred driven hence, the soul recovers radical innocence. So if all kind of hatred is driven, then the soul will come out pure, the soul will recognize its radical innocence, and it will learn that it is self delighting, it will become self delighting, self appeasing, and self affrighting, and the sweet will become heaven's will. So it will be a great blessing from God if she drives out all hatred. Her soul will become pure and innocent. It will be self delighting, self appeasing, and self affrighting, and the will merge with heaven's will. That is, heaven will recognize it as it will come down as blessings from heaven. She can, though every face should scowl, and every windy quarter blow howl, or every bellows burst, be happy still. She can, though every face should scowl. There might be enemies. Others might reject this idea. Others might not like her uh, being so loving, and there might be windy quarters from all around. See the symbols. And there might be bursting bellows, but she will be happy within. In spite of all the criticism around, she will find innate happiness. She will find innate pleasure. She will find innate satisfaction. In the last stanza, as a father, he talks about uh, his daughter's marriage. And may her bridegroom bring her to a house where all's accustomed, ceremonious, for arrogance and hatred are the wares peddled in the thoroughfares. How but in custom and in ceremony are innocence and beauty born? Ceremonies a name for the rich horn, and custom for the spreading laurel tree. What does he want for his uh, daughter? She wants a nice bridegroom to take her to his house, which is full of traditions, which is accustomed, which is ceremonious, and where there is no arrogance and hatred. She has already shed that. She should be happy with her husband in such a place. Arrogance and hatred are wares peddled in thoroughfares. So there should be no arrogance and hatred in that house. This is all a rough thing which should not be there and which is absent in accustomed and ceremonious families. How but in custom and in ceremony are innocence and beauty born? So, this kind of innocence which he desires for his daughter can nurture, can be born only where there is custom, where there is ceremony, where there is observance of tradition, of conventions. Ceremony is the name for the rich horn, and custom for the spreading laurel tree. So, rich horn, see, horn of plenty. Okay, this comes again. Horn of plenty comes from observing ceremonies, observing the right ceremonies. And when you observe custom, that means you're spreading the laurel tree, spreading the beautiful tree, spreading the green laurel tree, spreading prosperity, spreading peace, prosperity, and happiness. This is all that he wants for his daughter. You see, Yeats, as I told you earlier, was mainly known for his symbolism. You see words, howling, half-hid, roof-leveling wind. Storm is described as these things. The poet demonstrates his feelings through use of the symbols of weather. See, there's disturbance outside, there's storm outside. All this disturbance and the murderous innocence of the sea is all referring uh, to the revolution, to the disturbance, to the hard times, to the struggle Ireland is making. And then he, the symbol of beauty is described in detail. What kind of beauty does he desire for his daughter? And then you have the reference to Helen of Troy and of course Venus or Aphrodite, and you have also reference to Mortgone. Hearts are not had as a gift, but hearts are earned. These are lines which have become memorable. When you go to the structural analysis of the poem, you see the poem is written in a lyric form. It contains 10 stanzas with 8 lines in each stanza. It follows a regular rhyme scheme, which is not an essential feature of modern poetry. And the rhyme scheme is A B A B C D C D D C. The meter of the poem alternates between iambic pentameter and trochaic pentameter, and you have examples. I have walked and prayed for this child an hour and heard the sea wind scream upon the tower. And there are rich literary devices in the poem, like symbolism. Yeats is mainly known for his symbolism, personification, paradox, assonance, and alliteration. So, all the literary devices which are prescribed apply to Yeats's poetry. Go through the poem, read the poem again and again, uh, read the summary, go through the summary, elaborate upon the points which I have put in, and then go for the explanation. Stanza-wise explanation is essential because this is one of the most important poems, one of the modern poems, a trend-setting one, and try to answer the question, try to critically appreciate the poem and answer the questions as to why is Yeats known uh, for his symbolism, for his use of symbolism in his poetry. And of course, look in, underline the symbols and work upon it. And there are two references. So go for the biblical and epical references and read the poem again and again. Thank you. The next poem which I'll take up tomorrow will be Birches. Thank you.